Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Expertise Economy podcast. I'm your host, Catalin Matei, and this is the show where we talk about the business side behind companies built around expertise. Each week, we talk to expert creators who are building businesses around their audience and expertise, as well as we talk to founders who are creating education companies. In today's episode, we have Blake Lagrange, who's been the founding of Mastering.com as well as College.com. He recently sold Mastering.com, which is a production education business that's online, and now he spends most of his time mentoring people and helping others create education companies. Here's a couple of things you'll learn by the end of this episode. How Blake started having a service business by doing post-production work for others, how he eventually came up with the idea for what is now Mastering.com, the exact channels that Blake initially used to acquire customers and how he thought about building his team and then scale his team, how Blake sold this company, how is that process, and why he's now building College, an incubator for expert creators and education founders. And also lastly, we talk about two playbooks, one playbook for how to go from 0 to million in revenue as an expert-led education business, and how to go from million in revenue to building a sellable asset. Enjoy the podcast, give it a review, and we're looking forward to seeing you in our next episodes. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Expertise Economy. Today we have Blake with us. Blake, thank you so much for making the time to join this conversation. Been really looking forward to have this conversation with you today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm curious, like whereabouts in the world are you, and what did you do today before we started this podcast?
I'm in right now, currently La Jolla, which is a small part of San Diego County in Southern California, and I'd like to think more than half the year here, and then the other time is usually on the East Coast in New York City. And yeah, I think we were jamming for a little bit before. I drove the golf cart down and walked on the beach, and I got to go to the podcast, so I grabbed a coffee and then came back up. And so, yeah, a very beach town vibe, no shoes, no shirt, no problem kind of thing.
I'd love to understand, like, obviously this is your life now, but how did you get here? Like, how did you grow up? What was your passions growing up? We'll get into Mastering and the previous company before that. But before we do, I just love your quick background. Like, how did you get here? Obviously, your life looks like Instagram now. But what's the background story maybe?
Oh man. Well, I mean, it helped that I grew up here. I grew up in Southern California, in San Diego. Family was immigrating from South Africa, actually. So I was a first-generation American. And so being a first-generation American, not knowing anybody and integrating ourselves, I couldn't have asked for a better city to grow up in, San Diego. Very chill, most chill, part of the of California for sure. And that was basically it. Like, just grew up here. And I think as far as I can remember, in terms of deep interests or things that, I don't know, I was curious about growing up, mostly had to do around my passion and love for music. My passion and love, I think at an early age, oddly enough, for theology, which was kind of like a curious thread that I pulled, that I'm still pulling today. And just living like a cool San Diego life. I mean, not much is expected of you if you're in San Diego other than just kind of just live here. So low stakes, that I think fostered a fantastic upbringing for me.
Quick thoughts. Obviously, when people are Googling you right now, they see College, they see Mastering.com. For a lot of people, they don't know there was a company before that called Mercury Mastering, which you were the founder of, which then got integrated into Mastering. So let's just start maybe a quick story on how Mercury Mastering got started. Were you a producer? Like, what were you doing in music specifically that got you started to think like this is a company you could start? And let's give that story a bit.
Yeah, I mean, to use the music analogy, there's like the analog and digital. I was very much in the analog world from the time I was, 16. I graduated high school early at 16, and so I went straight into the recording studio. Back then, I can't believe I can say this now, but back then everything was recording studio. This was before everybody had a copy of Logic on their MacBook when they bought it. So it was still kind of cool to go to a recording studio and record things. And it was cool to be in a band. I was looking at the Coachella lineup this year. I'm like, I don't know any of these people. But that's essentially what my life was like right at 16, just in the studio. And I spent, you know, 10 to 12 hours a day in the recording studio behind a console recording bands and being a producer. I just jumped right into that. And that was essentially my creative upbringing, and I guess you could say the start of my career. And fast forward a little bit into Mercury Mastering. Very proud of that company. It essentially, man, it I can't take too much credit, because what ended up happening, as I mentioned before, is that everybody wanted to go in the recording studio. It was cool to do so. But when copies of Logic started popping up on everybody's computer, there was a move in how things were recorded and produced, which was essentially, I will record everything myself. I will create myself. Sort of the creation and recording process is all one and the same. And if I need to go to the recording studio, it'll be for, things that you really need a studio for, like drums or something. So, and move towards me just doing lots of drums and then stuff like this. But the change in the industry, it begged for a need of post-production work. Because turns out, if you are used to recording in an incredible studio where everything's controlled with great engineers, and if you get a copy of Logic and you're recording in your bedroom, turns out it won't sound nearly as good. So what ended up happening was all of these records, while very cool and creative, weren't sonically that great. So I don't know. I think as I was in the studio more and more, I started to realize how good things sounded there and how bad things sounded in a bedroom. So I sort of filled a need of post-production work. And it was at that point, fast forwarding a bit, where I decided to just go all in on post-production work to scale. So yes, I could be in the studio producing music, recording drums, producing bands, all that stuff. But I saw a massive need for post-production work. And so, and I guess we can chunk down on any bit of this that you want. But when I made that move, it was fantastic, because, if you're stuck in the studio for 10 to 12 hours a day, time and dollars is kind of one and the same. With post-production work, you make your own schedule. The files are sent to you. You can charge what you're worth, and if you do it in a short amount of time, you're not punished for that. So there was this leverage around, I don't know, money, work, artistry that was sort of at relatively early age that I was curious about, and it went really well. And for that company, Mercury Mastering, I figured, hey, this must be a global thing. So I remember, I bought that domain because my number one mission, this is like a marketing thing, was I just want to be on the front page of Google. Like if you type in online mixing or online mastering, I just want to be the guy. And so I did a search, like, what are people searching for, right? Waves, the plugin company, had this Mercury bundle or something that they would sell for mastering. And I'm sure, yeah, maybe you know that, but it's, I figured, hey, everybody's searching for that. I'm just going to name my company Mercury Mastering. It's like the ultimate cheat code of SEO. So people were typing in Mercury bundle, all this stuff, and two M's sounded good. Done is better than perfect. I fired it up, and then I went all in on organic SEO content, I guess. And that started a career in worldwide, international post-production services, where I just get tons of tracks from all over the world sent to my computer. I would do my thing and then send it back. So that was sort of the birth of that company.
Oh, so the birth of Mercury Mastering wasn't necessarily directly into education stuff and
No.
courses and so forth. It was like, here's my post-production service business, and I can do this, and I can have leverage, and I'm good at it. And you just found a way to scale yourself through a service business. Is that my understanding correct?
Exactly. Like there is leverage there, right? Because you're not punished for, um, you're not, punished for being good at your job and charging the same amount and then, getting a song done pretty quickly. So there was leverage there, but as you're picking up on it, there's still a
Yeah.
cap of leverage in that service model. These are things that I learned much later. This done for you, done with you, education, all this. I didn't read any business books to tell me what those things were. I just intuitively felt like this was enough leverage for me and I could make a good living. And the way that I get my time back is I just get better at my job. And that's essentially it. And then yeah, pivoting to education came much later.
Ooh, interesting. So this was all you. Like you were good at post production, and you're like, great, set up a website, did the SEO thing, and called it Mercury Mastering, which is quite interesting for a person who's into production to like even know what SEO is and all these things. Like I know when I worked on my albums with, and I'm not a musician, but I worked with some albums with someone who's a very good producer, got really good things out of me, and this guy has no idea what SEO is and any of this stuff. So you were already like you had some business and marketing skills. So it was all you. You did services. That's pretty interesting. And when was the point where you're like, okay, this is cool. I have a little agency or studio thing where people come to me and that's great and you scaled yourself. Where was the point where you were like, okay, maybe there's something else beyond this? And how did you end up how long was this before you came up with the educational side?
It was quite some time. It's like it's almost I almost felt like I was still in the analog world because really leveraging all the things that we have now in terms of education, technology, and so forth. It seems like everybody is leveraging that. I still felt like, yeah, okay, I had a website, I had good SEO, whatever. That wasn't really pulling the lever of the internet as much as it could, but I thought it was a cheat code, right? So, how did I transition into this? I mean, you can only scale so much. I mean, I hired a couple engineers. How many sample tracks can I do? Should we do paid acquisition? And even those things creeping into my business, it put a stone in my shoe to go, okay, am I more like a business person, entrepreneur, or am I more like a producer? I think the entrepreneur crept into the music world as opposed to I'm this incredible artist, incredible producer, whatever, and I got to find a way to make this work. I don't know about that. I think there was a hints of there's something more here. So that curiosity and that thread led to the education stuff, which was I had too many stories where people would send me tracks and I would master them, and then I would get so much pushback of this didn't sound how I thought it would after it mastered and all this stuff. And here I am thinking, well, mastering doesn't fix all this stuff. It takes what you have and masters it. That's it. It's not going to do the magic that you think it's going to do. And so it required me to go back all the way to the production process, all the way to which microphone are we going to use for the kick drum, almost like thinking of it this way. Because of my background in the studio, I just intuitively thought like that. So what ended up happening was I think the most valuable thing I could have provided is here's my album, here are the final mixes. Before you master it, could you push back and tell me what I need to fix in the mixes and what you're hearing objectively as a mastering engineer to prep these better so that your job's easier, is essentially what the dialogue was like. It was that
Ah,
pushback process that I was so curious about. I would much rather enter into those dialogues, much rather enter into those conversations. It got to the point, man, where before people would, these returning clients, would even produce or record anything, they would call me and say, here's what I'm thinking about. How should we go about this? I realized more and more that my value was not in the knobs that I was turning, but in my ear and what I was hearing, objectively speaking, and how it could influence the production process so that as it gets to the mastering stage, it's ready to rock and roll. It was that moment where I realized, okay, they're not paying for mastering, dude. They want the sound that they have in their head and they'll do anything to get it. And I have these ears that can help them. And so I'm actually capped with the creative potential of this individual if I just service them. How can I give them what I have so that as they are, like I mentioned before, as they are writing and producing, they're also recording, but they're also keeping an objective frequency sonic spectrum thing in mind to where really they're just getting what they want, which is the sound they have in their head. That planted the seed of there's something more to this than just doing work. It's, I think I need to educate them. So I can keep going if you'd like, but that's what started this whole like, there's something around education. And plus, I graduated high school early, didn't go to college. I thought the education system was broken. I thought I could be a better educator, et cetera, et cetera. So there's other kind of through lines that helped push that endeavor.
You saw that feedback, and then I like it on your website on college.com. So you say you're either a subject matter expert, an operator, or a content creator. Like those kind of like when I think of an education company, I use different words, but it's basically the same thing. We need expertise, we need this distribution, and we need business operations. So it's the same thing, just different words. So for you, when you saw that, was like, okay, I'm having my service business. I see this pattern. I see this need. Um, were you alone by this point of when you started the kind of the education side? And which one of those pieces did you do? Like, did you start, well, content, maybe distribution came from SEO, but I'm assuming you were the expert initially, and were you also the business person? How was this dynamic initially, and how did you first go around building those initial couple courses or whatever it was at that time?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you know, it's in the beginning stages, you're everything. You're the janitor, you're the accountant, you're everything. So, yeah, it was just like I had to figure it all out. And I remember just having that conviction of like, if they only knew my process and they were educated on this, this would, you know what it was, man, is once I pulled that thread, I realized something. I realized that if I actually told them this and I infused this knowledge into them, then I kind of have worked myself out of a job, and that's a problem because now I don't have a job. I don't, I'm not needed. I'm not this incredible genius. um, so that was an issue. So I just figured, well, I think that's creating more value for the economy. And if I attach a price tag to it, I don't think I'll work myself out of a job. I just think I'll transition into some other, I don't know, person as opposed to the doer. And that was it, man. Like I sent an email out to at the time my list of clients, and I whipped up a quick funnel, as it were. And if you want to know my process, what I'm doing, I'm building something. Um, watch this video. I filmed a quick slideshow presentation to get on the phone with me. I mean, none of this is new, and intuitively, I just figured that would be the best move. And I got like 14 people on the phone, and I sold 7 people into this couple $1,000 thing that didn't exist, and said, okay, there's something here. Went to I just said, okay, this is it. Went to my mortgage broker, and there was some equity in my home. And I said, dude, could I get a home equity line of credit? And, yep, no problem. Bada bing, bada boom. Wrote myself a check, purchased the domain name mastering.com. And I'm like, this is my new company. I'm doing this. And yeah, at the beginning stages, it was all that. And then, I mean, fast forward, it's like like a multi-million-dollar like education company with like lots of team members and like revolutionizing like the way education is done in the music industry. And it all kind of started from my little studio, like helping people for a long time, doing the actual work, and then moving through that education journey as a way to honestly just provide more value and work myself out of a job. It turns out, ironically, more wealth is created for everybody if you do so.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. That's very mature of you. It's very hard and it's very painful initially to face those facts when you're really moving yourself out of a job, or when you speak with someone and you realize that your product idea is wrong, you need to switch. It's very mature of you to even consider that. So good for you. On the business side of all this, just for context, so from the moment, so you did the service thing for let's call it 2 years. That's what I feel intuitively. Is it more than that?
It was a little more
Like,
than that. I mean, in the studio, it was quite some time. I want to say ever since I was 16 to 25, I was in the studio doing my thing, like really
Well, so
doing it.
that's a
But
significant, like 10,000 hours,
yeah,
9 years of work.
exactly.
Yeah.
When it came to making a course, I did the exact opposite of what everybody else does, which is listen to the market. What are the needs? I just knew that like something was going on in the real world, and I just need to like document my process and tell people how to do it. And it came from that experience, I think.
Yeah. And those are most authentic, truly transformational educational experiences come from that type of context, not from people who do it from a marketing research perspective.
I
Those
think
though
so.
can those can pay revenue, but your authentic experience and true expertise after 10,000 hours, it's usually how great learning works. um,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
so questions. So you did 9 years of that, which was basically a service business, and then how was it like 5 years of basically building Mercury Mastering, then mastering.com, um, in then exiting? Was it like 5 year journey? And then I would love to maybe start a bit on the what happened in the between. But how long was that journey?
Yeah, in terms of the timeline, it some things were running in parallel. So there'd be days where I'd be in the recording studio, and then I come home and do the online business stuff. So I was turning one fader down while I was turning one fader up, to put it figuratively. So
Oh,
collectively, there was a transition out of the analog world, the studio world, into the digital world, and it was just kind of slowly doing that. And then as the done for you production, post production online educate or sorry, online service based business thing was going, I was doing the education thing. I would then slowly fade out that fader and go all in on education. So it was never really like I'm not doing this and I am doing this. It was just moving to more, I guess, more leveraged ways of doing business. And I think I was all in on the education stuff 2000, I don't know, 18 ish, like all in. Like that's what I'm doing. I stopped doing any sort of service based stuff. I shut down Mercury Mastering, went all in on mastering.com. And that journey up until August 2022 was the massive growth. That's when I exited the company and facilitated that process.
cool. Well, congrats. So let's start so 2018. There was still the service business. No, the service business was not on the side because you were all in. Got it.
Yeah.
Um, you were still so 2018. Like, how was there any team? I'm curious on the business side. Like, what were you doing? Who was doing marketing? You were doing all the courses, and when did you start? Maybe take me through like the behind the scenes of when did you start recruiting team members and what did you do and when did you start recruiting other people to create courses, which is a massive thing. Like walk me through that progression of kind of transforming this little project you had to basically a sellable asset, which is
Yeah.
I think very rare people do that transition to begin with from starting to from
Right.
like a indie project to a sellable asset. It's quite a transition. So walk me through a bit how you see that.
Yeah, I'm still trying to play catch up with it. Like, how did that all happen? And so now helping people do it now, it's like I always have to recount, like, intuitively I did those moves, but I'm like, I need to document what happened there. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it was just me, myself, and I for a while, but as you can only build something by yourself for so long. So I needed help, man. I I was doing everything. I was like making the course, selling the course, marketing the course, and I realized like that I can't do much else of this, right? And so a good friend of mine came alongside me, and tremendous respect to him. He basically was like, "You should do advertising," and I'm like, "All right, I've never done advertising," so um, he like ran ads for me. The same funnel. We had a video. There was some good top of funnel stuff. I knew how to sell. I knew how to fulfill. The course was already built. I just put more people into it. And I remember, dude, we spent up like, I don't know, probably spent like a couple $100 a day for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that generated like 5 calls a day for a couple weeks. Nobody
Wow.
was advertising to the space. Nobody. It was just a wide open field. And I couldn't believe it. And everybody on the call would say, like, "You're speaking directly to me. I can't believe all this stuff." I wasn't because I was a great marketer. I think it's because I was, to my credit a little bit, I was an expert in the thing that I did, so I just intuitively knew their problems. And that expertise pays off infinitely more than any sort of marketing framework or business framework, et cetera, right? So we had to shut the ads off. We had to shut everything down. I sold a bunch of people into it. Our close rate was through the roof, and it was like, okay, oh my goodness, this is like a whole thing. So the next move was like, well, what's the next bottleneck? People on the phones. So hired a sales team, like trained them all and got them dialed in. And of course they sucked, and I sucked at training them. So it's like, all right, my next role is sales manager. I have to train them and get them dialed in. Sales team was running. So I had ads, sales team, and I completely ignored all organic. Completely ignored it. Just forget the SEO stuff that I was doing in the past. This is working. And now, fast forward, mind you, COVID's coming up. COVID's starting to happen. The government's dropping money out of helicopters to people. So there's a little bit of a tailwind of people wanting to invest in their education, and rightfully so. I mean, time to do so. At a certain point, man, it was like 5 or 6 people on sales, advertising. That was the first time I had really a team. If you want to fast forward a little bit more, it eventually got to the point where there was like 30 something team members. I had an incredible business partner who did so much of the operations, marketing, and so forth. He's an incredible human being. He was a tremendous help in this. Um, but slowly and slowly, dude, like I became smaller, and that was good. That was good because as our team took over, and as I became smaller and smaller, the company grew and grew and grew. And then I remember the day where it's like, we're going to redo all of our content and our courses. But Blake, you are not going to be in it. Our team is going to do it. That was a, okay, my baby. I'm not, where am I? Who am I? And these sort of existential questions started popping up right around there. And uh, yeah, I mean, dude, if you eventually work yourself out, the company grows. And oddly enough, in order to sell an asset like that, you need to be out. So it worked out great.
Yo, that's incredible. So you know what I like about, well, it may sound a bit too much, but here's something I can observe I think you have, which is quite rare with a lot of the creators I speak. And I'm curious of your experience because you speak with a lot of creators, and I call them creators, so experts, creators, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I call it expert creators more specifically, or educational creators, whatever it is. So when I speak with them, I think something that you have, which is very interesting and maybe a bit unique, is you have a very good willingness to just fail and learn as you go, which you may think it's nothing. It's not really nothing, especially around your core area of expertise. And then second, you have this humbleness to think that becoming smaller is better, which again may seem like nothing, but a lot I have like also from my past work with Jordan Peterson and a lot of other big folks. The biggest challenges also come from the fact, like the biggest benefit of the business is there's this person who draws all this brand attention and marketing and everything. That's also the biggest problem at the same time.
Yeah.
So you kind of having the humbleness to remove yourself from that and becoming smaller allowed you to like have a kid that graduates and can go off and live on their own instead of being dependent on the mom or dad or something, which is quite cool. So that seems to be where your business partner came in, which
Yeah.
seems to have been with you from early stages, like 2018. Was he with you, or he
He
came a
he
bit
kind
later,
of
maybe
came
like
in.
head of ops?
It was more post COVID. I remember he came in, and everything I wasn't, he was. Everything he wasn't, I was. And so it was beautiful, man. I mean, in this space, in this kind of, I guess you would say, creator economy or education economy or so forth. This is before it really boomed. And by the way, and I'm sure you agree with this, I don't even think we've tapped into this huge boom of alternative education. I think we're just getting started. But in the music niche, people doing 7 figures a year in education in the music niche, I mean, there's like, what, 4 people at the time doing it in the world, besides like universities, which I eventually wanted to just go after, you know, he was one of them. So it was like, you're really good at this. I'm really good at this. why don't we share teams? Why don't we share clients? Why don't we share everything? And the humility from him and teaming up and working together with that, best move ever. Because I could do my thing, he could do his thing, and having a bro in the business, it's like, my goodness, all credit to him, right? Because at that point, I saw even more power in a team. You know, now there's like now there's some killers, right? And then from that relationship, some alphas, you know, rose up from that team, and now they're running it. And so, you know, I'm a huge fan of like people versus process. I know there's so many people that are the opposite. That's fine. I just in how I'm wired, um, it's just very relational, and that works quite well for me.
Yeah. So this business partner, if I understand correctly, he was running a similar operation to you, and you
Yep.
kind of got together and was like, let's work together and instead of separately, and maybe you kind of merged your projects or whatever
Yeah.
later on. Is this what happened?
Yeah. Exactly. He was taking care of the music creation process, a fantastic educator. I was taking care of the mastering post production process. So there was just an incredible synergy
Mm.
of the producer's journey. It wasn't even friendly competition. It's you're in that lane, I'm in this lane. What if we just taught the whole thing? Made a ton of sense.
Oh, so he was handling like a different part of the learning journey of the same targeted market that you were targeting. That's amazing. That's really good synergy. And
Mm,
this kind of puts me to my maybe last question, and then I want to talk a bit about the exit and just how it happened.
yeah.
And then I'd love to talk about college a bit. So, on this, one of the things I've noticed, so there's two major issues with kind of like this emerging kind of type of education company. Creator-led education companies, great. They're great.
Yeah.
Why? Because you can scale them quickly. You may have an audience. You have the expert right there. It's like maybe you don't have the business expertise, but you can get somebody on. That's great. The biggest issue is like removing, like de-risking the business and all the things you've done intuitively, which props to you, and it's quite rare. Um, the second part is basically business model. A lot of in my opinion, though, so I'd love your thoughts on
Mm,
this. So the kind of the most of education companies, they really have a graduation problem like Tinder. So if you match people together and they like get in a relationship, that's basically you're done. You're like Tinder doesn't make money anymore. So the better you are at matching people for long-term relationships, the faster you lose revenue. So similar, for example, with I think your company, I might be wrong with the business model right now, but to how I understand it, is people go through, it's like, let's call it 5-7 grand or whatever it is, and they learn different parts that they want to learn maybe in a year or two, and after that they're done. So it's like which puts a lot of pressure on marketing, or maybe puts more pressure on creating multiple products so you continue to serve them. I'm really curious how you see this. Very few, I think, companies have figured this out, and I think is the secret to a real long-term business, like 10 years
yeah.
plus, have something that sustains real lifetime value. I'm curious how you think about this, and then we'd love to, maybe this kind of a segue into college as well. We can talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. The learnings that I've had with college in this business, it does seem to be I don't want to say the opposite of what I've done with mastering or what I did in my involvement there, but close to it. I think with
Mm-hmm.
the mastering business, you know, it all started from the value is created if I work myself out of a job, which relies deeply on my expertise. You know, Jiro dreams of sushi. The assumption is that nobody's going to be him, right? So there's always going to be this demand, right? I sort of I did not compare myself to him, but the skill set of mastering was this sort of dark art. So I figured, okay, either I submit myself to this idea that I'm this dark art magician and I have the keys to the kingdom, or I fundamentally believe there's a way to infuse this knowledge into ordinary individuals like myself. And that move of removing myself by infusion of knowledge into the lives of individuals inevitably turns into value, inevitably turns into a fantastic business model. The same move is made with teams. I didn't necessarily think, how do we increase lifetime value of a customer by always keep them coming back? Because it was my fundamental principle behind this is I want them to never need us ever again. And in that, I believe creates more value, right? Yeah, I love, and I see those ads all the time on the subway. It's like Hinge or Tinder or all this stuff. It's the app that you should delete or whatever. I think it's very good. Now, it's too scarce to think, how do we keep them coming back for more? You know, the pharmaceutical industry, I think, likes to think of it themselves that way. And I don't know, I'm more interested in wellness than medicine in some sense of the word when it comes to education. And so, but ironically, dude, what ended up happening was I thought much too highly of myself, because here I am thinking all of the value is infusing this incredible knowledge into them. No, no, no. They want to be around other producers. They want to be around other incredible people in the world. And COVID, right? It gave everybody a sense of, I mean, we isolated ourselves from everybody. How in the world can I meet somebody exactly like me? That's a true friend. Go to look at somebody else and go, oh, me too, you too. Wow, your common bond. And I think somebody in Russia and then somebody in California bonding together over common, I don't know, educational material, but more importantly, common loves to sit around the campfire, if you will. Okay, ironically enough, um, that's how you increase lifetime value of a customer. If you want them to keep coming back, you're curating a community essentially, as opposed to we have all the secret materials of education. It's we've curated a movement here to bring people together. And yeah, I guess at that point you move from an evergreen lifetime model to an annual payment model. And if you wanted to stick around, then you could keep paying. But mind you, it wasn't to keep them coming back for all this incredible education. It wasn't just that. It's the actual value is in this incredible community, and people love each other in this. It's at that point it becomes an insurance policy of your life just to be around these incredible people, you know?
Yeah, insurance policy of your career. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's
cool.
right. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and this may be a good segue to college. I'm curious, and I'll give you my thoughts after, but I'm curious of
Sure.
your, now that you went through this and you're a very intuitive guy, um, there's like different kinds of people I know in this space. There's not that many people who are like into what you're doing and what I'm doing, like
Yeah.
expert creators and like kind of these small niche, technically service businesses. They're not really technology companies because the tech is redundant. We're not building education technology because Teachable exists, Kajabi exists, or whatever. You can put them together. So really like a service business, but it's tech enabled. So I'll give you my thoughts on that, but I'm curious on, well, before I do, actually, one thing before. I'm curious. So you exited this, so we won't
Mhm.
talk about the details, which is fine. I'm curious. What was your rationale for leaving versus staying on?
Yeah.
Because fine, there was some money that came out. A lot of people still choose to like stay involved. So I'm curious, what was your rationale for leaving? Maybe you're still involved in some capacity. Curious, what would that be? And then, how did you feel after your 18-year-old daughter left for college and then she no longer needed
Uh,
you, and you were kind of left with an empty house? That was a big house
yeah.
because you built like this big house and like whatever, and it was kind
Right.
of maybe, well, and you're in your case, you have family. I'm thinking you have kids. I don't know, but I'm
Yeah.
curious, how
Yeah.
did that feel after your company kind of left the kind of took off, and what, how did you motivate yourself, or what's the motivation to do what now is college? And would love to maybe dive into
Yeah.
that in the thesis there. So
Yeah, it's like the illustrative principle of coming to any sort of conclusion. It wasn't just one thing. It was a series of hunches, experiences, knowledge, counsel, circumstances that brought me to like I think it's best to exit. Um, at the time, we had a fundamental choice. The team, what do we do with this business? And we were building college basically, which was like there's something here in what we're creating. This is an alternative path for individuals if they want to be educators, or if they want to be educated. And there's also an alternative path for people who want to be educators. So it's sort of helped both people. The people who are really good at something, who wanted to build an income for themselves that was very sustainable, and then two, the people, their clients, their members that would benefit from their journey, were pushing back against the traditional academic system. It was in that, I guess, curiosity that college was born while I was running Mastering. And the thought was Mastering becomes a subsidiary company. We do other sort of companies. We do other sort of things like this. And we get creators together. And, at the time, the model was, well, we will own all the education. It was very much an enterprise, like, I don't know,
Like a private
content
equity
and
firm. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And that was kind of the idea. And then the Mastering business would sort of fund that endeavor in terms of learnings and finance and so forth. And my passion of that mission, I couldn't let go of it. So when it came time to what do we do with this, I think the growth equation was how do we grow college? Mastering is in this. We have different brands underneath this. How do we grow this? We had a few different options. Do we work with a few investors? Do we sell some part of it? Do we grow? Like, what's the mission? And ultimately, I just fundamentally had a deep conviction that for me, my time in that company, Mastering, it's gonna have to keep growing. And if that's the case, then I either need to make a decision. Do I go all in on that or all in on this new idea that I had with college? And it was the conviction and drive around there's something in this economy of learning that I believe could be a container for me to, as you said, kind of grow my character and use my expertise, and I think add a different kind of value to the economy. And it's a journey I wanted to go on. It was the conviction of that new venture that led me to go, I need to really let go of this. It wasn't much else than that, other than the conviction